And I'm also going to share Google Chrome because that's where the Google Slides are. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We should have plenty of time to work through this. This is just our course wrap up and review for the final. I must say I appreciate all of you. I know, as I've said before, I know you did not sign up when you came to UMBC for online education. But I think it's gone fairly well this semester. I understand a lot of you had some issues. It's been interesting. We're getting old pro at this, but hopefully in the fall we'll be back on campus like we should be. I've gotten a lot out of this again. I always enjoy teaching because I get more out of from the students in some cases than I probably should, but it's a great way to learn from me, and hopefully it's helped you. In terms of submitting project 3, I'm going to do a couple of things. In theory, I've talked to Sean. You should be able to submit project 3 online to GL. Remember, you are not submitting a .py. This is specifically a .ipynb, IPYNB file that you are submitting. And you can just email it to me. Just email your IPynB file to my UMBC email address. I'm going to download the ones that are submitted on GL. If you email it to me, I'll have it that way. So if you're having problems submitting and you just want to email it to me, when I get it by email, I will send you a receipt that says, I got it, you're good. Okay, I'll send you an email message saying I got it, so we're all fine. It is due tonight. A couple of you have asked about extensions. I know this is not the only class you're taking. You got a lot of things going on. If you absolutely have to, let me know, and I can give you until Friday night, the 14th at midnight. That's the absolute latest I can go. But I can give you an extension until Friday night if you absolutely need it. You have to let me know, and I'll take care of that. We can't really go past Friday because there's a lot of paperwork I have to do to wrap up the semester, and we need to get that taken care of. But if you absolutely need to, I can let you have until Friday night. Okay, that's the 14th, and that's midnight. That's an extra 48 hours. In terms of Project 3, and I'm going to cut over and walk through this. What I showed you in terms of reading in all the files and building the dates on Monday. Wow, this is Wednesday today. That was Monday I covered that. I showed you how to do it, presuming the dates were in order, and then I actually showed you a graph created by reading in the files with 3 of them out of order. So what I want to do is walk through a couple of things. The first thing I want to do, and I'll cut to a Jupyter notebook in just a second to show this. All of the files have names that look like this. They're 04 for April, then a dash, then 2 digits that are the date between 11 and 24 inclusive, then a dash, and then 2021.csv. So, for instance, the first file on the list numerically is 04-11-2021, and the last file on the list is 04-24-2021. So we can see that the 2 digits that make up the date are always, remember we start at 0. This gets read in as a string. So I'll show you in a second the code. It's a variable called file. This all gets read into a variable called file, and it's a string. So this 0 is file sub 0. This 4 is file sub 1. This dash is file sub 2. And the next 2 elements in the string, file sub 3 and file sub 4, are always the 2 digits that make up the day. Okay, again down here, file sub 0 is the 0. File sub 4 is 1. File sub 2 is this dash. File sub 3 is the 2, and file sub 4 is the 4. So we can take advantage of the fact that the 2 things that make up the date in all of our files are always file sub 3 and file sub 4. Now, this is a string. These are characters. So if we want to use that, we have to convert them to integers. we know that any two-digit number is always expressed as this times 10 plus this. 11 is the 1 times 10 plus 1. 24 is 2 times 10 plus 4. So that's the justification. So what I can do is I can say there's an integer variable called date. Date is always equal to 10 times, take this first thing, cast it to an integer, plus this second thing, cast it to an integer. 2 times 10 plus 4 is 24. And that always gives us the date. So going to our, try to get the right file, going to our Jupyter notebook. This is the same notebook I showed you on Monday when I walked through this. On Monday, I presumed that this code, I used J starting with 10, and I presumed the files were in order, and I got some, I used this function with J that always appended the, let's try this in plain English. By using this J, I assigned the date to each row. And that required that the files be read in order. If they're not read in order, you're going to get incorrect data because the wrong dates will be assigned to the wrong rows. So I can replace it with what I just showed you on the slide. This right here, this line is what I just showed you in the slide. The file name is read in the variable file. So given that the variable file contains that string, what I can now do is say date equals 10 times int of file sub 3 plus int of file sub 4. That turns 1, 1 into 11. That turns 2, 4 into 24. That turns 2, 0 into 20, etc. Date is now the correct date for the file, whether they are in order or not. So instead of appending J like I did on Monday, I can simply append date. And now I am guaranteed to have the right date on the rows of the right files, whether they're read in order or not. I'll run that cell, and you can see that I've deliberately made sure the files are not in the right order this time when I read them in. And so this is a case where, pardon me, I scrolled too much. This is a case where the first one that I read in was actually 20, the 20th. The next one I read in, here's the 20. I read in file 20 first, and then I read down in different orders. So this gives me the right answer, whether I read them in order or not. Now, as I go through this, the rest of the code stays the same. When I showed you the line plot for step 12 the other day, it actually gave incorrect data because 3 of the files were out of order in my directory. So I showed you things on Monday with the lines going up and down as a roller coaster, and a number of people said, wait a minute, I can't get that, I can't duplicate your results. I've looked at the recording, I copied your code exactly. I can't duplicate the results. What gives? The answer is what gives is that when I actually when I executed the cell to read in the files on Monday, I actually had 3 files out of order without realizing it. What you should get is a straight line. It should look something like this. Now, in terms of which state is on top, I've noticed I've got a couple of interesting things here. Plot 9, in my case, has split the scales. And so even though California and New York have the highest number of deaths, this has put the smallest value and put Maryland on top. Okay, if you look at the actual things, a number of others of you are getting the scale correctly, and Maryland is not on top. Maryland is down here on the bottom, which is where it actually belongs if you look at the number of deaths. Okay, Maryland has fewer deaths than Michigan, California, and New York. So if you get, as long as the scale is correct, the Maryland numbers are actually here, they're matching the scale, then this is fine. But you should look your multi-line plot for step, I think this is 12, should look like this. You should have 4 lines. Nothing goes up and down. The up and down came about because I had some files read in out of order. And so if you're trying to duplicate that, you won't be able to. You should get something that looks something like this. So if you're trying to match your plots to what I got, it should look something like this. The other plot I did on Monday, this is correct. This was fine. This was not impacted. Because we were only looking at the 11th, this was not impacted. This gave you the right answer. So that was just a couple of notes I wanted to point out. Now, somebody's asking me, one of the students was asking me as we started today about the scale. Can you change the scale on your plots? And the answer is yes, you actually can. And I'm going to jump to change y-axis scale. If we search this, you can go through and it will, there are a number of functions that you can do to change the scale on both your x-axis and your y-axis, okay? For example, it's all plot 9 dot scales. In this case, you can put a maximum value on y. There are transforms that let you change things with a log. So for example, if you have this as an initial one, you can tell your x-axis to scale to the log of 10. Let's change the y-axis. Sorry, wrong one. This is what it should be. Notice I did not say geom point here. So I'm going to also import scales. What's it called? Scale y log 10. Okay. I have to import the right thing. And hopefully, since I'm back to doing a live demo in real time that I have not tested ahead of time, now, to get the right answers, I'm going to have to run all the cells. So I go up here and run all. And hopefully everything works. Okay. Run, run, run. It was taking a while. I was too impatient. Okay. That's that, that's that, that's that, to drop NA. Here's my chart. Okay, and here's the one. Hopefully this worked. We get it. No, it didn't like it. Okay. Okay. I have a discrete value. It's another one. Okay, let me put that off then and go to the end of the lecture. Let's get back to that. But the bottom line is yes, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do to the scale to make it more legible, and you can play around with it. In terms of this assignment, if you leave it so I can understand that you have the correct values and you have those 4 lines as they are, that's good enough. If you want to play around with it, just Google the Plot 9 documentation and you'll find the right thing there. We'll skip that for now. Let's talk about the final for the next little bit, and then we'll come back to project 3 afterward. Unless you have made other arrangements, it's next Monday, the 17th, 3:30 to 5:30. I have 2 students already who made arrangements to take it Monday morning. That's fairly simple to set up in Blackboard, so I have to know. I do have students who have accommodations for more time. Don't worry, I've already got you set up. You will have as much time as you are permitted. So that's fine. You're just going to start at 3:30 and you go all the time you have. It is like exams 1 and 2. It'll be on Blackboard. It has short answers. It has multiple choice true false, and it has programming questions. My intent is to be available in real time. If you have any questions, if something isn't clear enough, if you're not sure what to do or whatever, which is why I'm asking you to let me know. I mean, the way Blackboard works, I can set it up so that you could take it any time as long as you're done by, say, Monday night. And that's fine, except that I may not be available if you have, if you have a question when you're taking the exam and I'm not available, then you can't ask your question. So that's the only reason I ask you to let me know. We'll set it up. Expect 15 multiple choice or true false questions that are worth 3 points each. That's 45. Expect 10 short answer questions like they've had before. That's 5 points each. That's another 50. And expect to write 3 Python programs at 10 points each. That's a total of 125 points. So again, it's just like the other 2 exams, except it's a little bit longer. There is a sample final on Blackboard. I put it out there. We're going to walk through that fairly quickly. Just to give you a heads up, this actually was last semester's final exam, except for 2 questions. There were a couple of things we did last fall that I did not bother to repeat this semester because I learned my lesson. And so there are 2 questions that are new, but other than that, if you happen to know somebody who was in my class, which was section 60 in fall 2020, it is exactly the final they took, as I said, except for those 2 questions. If you haven't gone through it yet because you're busy with project, no problem. If you don't want to worry about what I'm saying about it now, you're going to worry about it between now and Monday. That's cool. If you have any questions about anything on the sample final or anything else, between now and Monday, ping me and I will be happy to explain, provide answers, correct something or whatever. Yes, the final is comprehensive. I mean, it pretty much has to be, right? If I ask you to write a program, you're going to have integer variables. You're not allowed to forget what's a valid integer variable in Python. You're not allowed to forget how integer division works as opposed to floating point division. So from that standpoint, it pretty much, this comp sci, this pretty much has to be a comprehensive final. Ballpark, don't hold me to this exactly, but my target, as the test is about half made out. I'm still working on it. About a third to a half the questions are going to be on the material since exam 2. So we're going to have somewhere between a third and a half the questions are going to be on the searching and sorting algorithms that we talked about, on the analysis of algorithms, big O, big omega, big theta, on importing code and how you use it, on that kind of stuff, right? The rest of the questions will all be from earlier in the semester. And as I said, even the questions that are from now, I mean, in order to write a search algorithm, you have to know how to do loops. Okay. So from that standpoint, you know it. No, there are no Jupyter Notebook specific questions on the exam. There's going to be nothing about markdown cells, nothing about code cells, nothing how to create a new cell. I'm not going to ask you how to fire up a Jupyter Notebook. There are no Jupyter Notebook specific questions. It's all Python. There are not going to be any specific questions about how Plot9 works or how Pandas works or how Turtle Graphics works. There will be generic graphing questions, but they will not be specific to, a package. I'm not going to do that. Again, it is an open book test. In your 2 hours, I recommend you be able to answer most of the questions off the top of your head. But if you do need to look something up, that is permissible. It's an open book exam. Lots and lots of questions about variables, lists, dictionaries, development, the class things, what have you. So that is a background of what I want to spend the next few minutes doing, is going through the exam, the sample exam that's on Blackboard, and I'll explain what I meant, what I was looking for, and you can feel free to tell me I got an answer wrong. So, as I said, 15 questions that are true, false, multiple choice. Question 1, which of the following is not a valid variable name in Python? Remember, all the way back to the first week of the semester, variable names can contain underscores, uppercase, lowercase, and digits. They cannot start with a digit. So therefore, one team name is not a valid variable name in Python because it starts with the digits and that's not permitted. Now, team one name and capital team one name and capital one team name, etc. These are not things we use. This violates the CompSci 201 style guides for variable names, but they're perfectly legit in Python. Question 2, you've had this question before. You know this by now. The best way to write a complex program, such as your Project 3, is to write all the code at once, run all the cells, test and debug it at the end. This is false, okay? Do not do it this way. Test as you go. Write some code, test it. Write some code, test it. It helps you isolate where the bugs are because you're going to make them and fix them.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, I just set off Siri on my home thing. Sorry. Okay. 3. Which of the following are immutable types in Python? Immutable. Integers, floats, strings, booleans. Lists are mutable. Dictionaries are mutable. These are immutable. Cannot be changed after they're created. 4. A function call can occur anywhere in a Python program except on the left hand of an assignment statement. Now I explain, the rest of the text explains what that means. The left hand of an assignment statement is this equals whatever. The equal sign is an assignment statement. You're supposed to remember that. So you cannot, in other words, you cannot say factorial equals this where factorial is a function. Now, this is valid if factorial is a variable, but if factorial is a function name, this is invalid. This is an error. And so therefore, the answer to question 4 is that it's true. Question 5 on the sample exam. If X is a string and Y is a one-dimensional list, you can change one element of Y by saying Y equals capital A. Ignore the fact that that was a typo with a capital Y. It was not supposed to be. It's a small y. It's not a typo. But you can't do that to X. X equals A is an error Y. Okay? This is a weird question and why I wanted to be online, and let me explain this. What I'm looking for is you can't change an individual value. Obviously, I can reassign the entire string. So this is actually, as I phrased it, a bug, okay? And you could say none of the above answers is correct, and you would get credit for it. I would give you credit for that because X equals A is actually a valid string assignment. What I wanted to do here was say X sub Y is a list. You can change one element of Y by saying Y sub 0 equals A, but you can't say X sub 0 is an A, and for some reason I left them out. What I'm looking for here is that strings are mutable and lists are immutable. That's the answer I'm looking for, but again, because this was an error on my part and I didn't catch it, if you said none of the above answers is correct because this is a valid string assignment, okay, I'll let it fly. Okay. The point of this question that I was looking for is strings are mutable and lists are, I'm sorry, this is incorrect. This is backwards. Strings are immutable. You cannot change a string. You cannot say X sub 0 equals A. Okay. That's the answer I'm looking for. This would have been okay. That's a typo. I tried. I take the test 2 or 3 times, but I knew what I meant when I wrote it, so hopefully it didn't have it. 6, suppose you have the following code. Answer equals input. Please enter your favorite movie. Enter Q to quit. While answer is not equal to Q, print answer was an awesome movie and read it again. This is an example of a sentinel-based while loop, and Q is the sentinel. This is true. That's exactly what that is. This is a sentinel-based while loop, and Q is the sentinel that we're looking for. Remember, a sentinel-based loop says we run until we see a certain value, and that value is called the sentinel. 7, if you open a file in Python and do not specify a mode in which to use the file, what happens? When you do not specify a mode, the default is open for R, open for reading as the default if you do not specify. 8, one of the things we just talked about, big theta is only defined when big omega and big O are the same. They're both O of n squared, or they're both O of n, or they're both whatever. This is true. Big theta is only defined when big O and big omega are the same. So for bubble sort, where big O and big omega are different, there is no such thing as big theta of bubble sort. Okay, order of operations. Suppose you have this Python statement. In what order does Python execute the arithmetic operators? Remember the order of precedence? Exponentiation comes first. 3 squared is 9. Then you do multiplication, division, left to right. You do 4 times 3, that's 12. Then take 12 divided by 2, that's 6. Then you do 6 times 4 is 24. Okay, so you now have 6 plus 24 minus 9, and you would evaluate that. So operators are executed strictly in left to right order. That is false. Multiplication, division comes before addition, subtraction. Exponentiation comes before all of them. So the first answer can't be right. The second answer, multiplication, division, left to right order, then addition, subtraction, then exponentiation is done last. That is incorrect. You do not do exponentiation last, you do exponentiation first. Python evaluates in right to left order. I just made that up to see if you're paying attention. That's clearly false. So the answer to this question is none of the above is correct, because order of operation, operator precedence, exponentiation, then multiplication, division in left to right order, then addition, subtraction, left to right order, parentheses changes everything. 10, pseudocode is a natural language, e.g. English description of what the program is supposed to do. It can then be turned into actual code by a competent programmer. This is true. Or at least we hope like heck it's true. Okay. 11, what is the hexadecimal equivalent of this long binary string? When you are converting binary to hex, it's 4 bits at a time. 1101 is D. It's 13. Okay. 0111 is 7. 1010 is 10, which is A. 1010 is 10, which is A. And 0011 is 3. So we convert 4 bits to a single hex digit, and then we come up with D7AA3. Remember, 0x is hexadecimal. So that means this is the right answer. This is incorrect. That's a hex number, but it's not the right one. And these two cannot be right because they are decimal. They are base 10 numbers. They're not 0x's, so they can automatically be ruled out. The answer to question 11 is this first answer is correct. Okay. Question 12. Our class coding standards require using snake case for long variable names and all caps for constant names, even though Python itself accepts camel case, where you have the middle, the capital of a new word in the middle of the name, and doesn't truly support the notion of a constant. This is absolutely correct. 13, we have our old friend, the variables, the list that's the list of the states. And I want to know how I would print out the states in the list starting at New Jersey and ending at Pennsylvania. And I do want to print out Pennsylvania. Okay. Counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. New Jersey is 29. Okay. What's Pennsylvania? 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. So we do want to print out 37. So if we say print states from 29 to 37, we will not get Pennsylvania. So that's why this is wrong. If we do colon to 38, we will get everything. We will not start at New Jersey. We'll start at Alabama. This is the correct answer. Question 14. It is possible to open a file for both reading and writing in Python. This is true. Please be very careful if you do that, because remember, when you open a file for writing, not appending, but writing, you can erase it quickly. So what you have to do is, if you open it for both reading and writing, open it, read everything, and then start writing, and it'll trash everything you had before. That is possible. 15. Which of the following types can be used as keys in a dictionary? Keys must be unique. Keys must be immutable. Immutable and unique are the requirements for keys in a Python dictionary. Values can be anything. Values need not be unique, and values can be immutable or mutable. Values can be lists and dictionaries themselves. Keys cannot be lists. Keys cannot be dictionaries. So a key, it must be unique. It must be immutable. And immutable is strings, ints, floats, and booleans. Dictionaries themselves can be values. They cannot be keys. Lists can be values. Lists cannot be keys. Any type of study this semester can be used as a key. No, clearly not. The immutable types, strings, ints, floats, and booleans, are the legal values for keys. That's our multiple choice. Explain the difference between del and pop in removing items from a list in Python. It is as simple as removing the value by its index, or removing the list element by its index, versus removing the element by its actual value. Okay? And now, since I'm guaranteed to get this wrong, del, I thought so. Del removes the value. I'm sorry. Del removes multiple. Pop removes the element by the index. Okay. Del is the one I'm thinking, this is my error. Multiple elements. And then removes by value. Okay. How do we make a deep copy of a one-dimensional list in Python? We covered at least two ways to do this. Just explain one. And this is a one-dimensional list, so you don't have to worry about two-dimensional. This is the easier case. One way is just to use list slicing. If L is a list, a deep copy is K equals L from beginning to end. The other way we talked about is using the list constructor. K equals list of L. These are two ways we talked about to make a deep copy. Just pick one. Explain what a symbol table is in a language such as Python. The symbol table is the data structure that contains the known symbols, function names, variable names, constants, and tells where they are in memory. Their address or location, and I would accept anything like that. So what's a symbol table? The symbol table says if I see a variable name, if I see a function name, if I see a constant name, where do I go find it? It tells me, does it exist already? If it exists already, where to find it? What's its memory location? Okay, and it'll tell me what type it is. It'll tell me it's an integer. It'll tell me it's a, I should say that, and the type. It'll tell me it's a function. It'll tell me it's an integer. It will not tell me the value. You don't have to say that, but it does not tell me the value in the table. It tells me where to go look at memory for the location. Okay, 19. It's a short function. It's a question of whether you use while versus for. It's a long question, but all I'm asking for is you want to use a while or a for and why. We're writing a function. The function prompts a user to enter the result of a single roll of 2 dice. Therefore, it's going to be an integer between 2 and 12. You roll 2 dice at the same time. You add up the things that come on top. You get anywhere from 2 to 12, right? 1 and 1 is 2, 6 and 6 is 12, and any value in between. The user might not enter an integer, or the user might not enter an integer between 2 and 12. If that happens, you're going to print an error message and ask the user to enter a valid number. You keep going until the user enters an integer between 2 and 12. You don't have to write that function. Somebody else wrote that function. It exists. But if I ask you to write that function, would you use a while loop or a for each loop, and explain why? The answer here is this is a while loop because you don't know how many times you're going to have to execute. You're going to execute this loop until the user enters a valid number. That could be the first time or the 1,000,000th time. Depends on the user. Okay. And so when you don't know how many times to execute a loop, always use while. Now, could you make a for each loop work? Yes. If you want to be a bad programmer, and by bad programmer, I mean somebody who breaks all the style rules, you absolutely can make Python do that. Okay? Please don't. The answer to this question is you would use a while loop. Now, suppose you have a file, number 20, numbers.py contains a program that the file is numbers.py. In that file is a program. It's got a function called factorial. Factorial has one parameter, an integer, and returns the factorial of that integer if it's non-negative, and returns -1 if it's negative. Write the Python code necessary to import the factorial function and then call it in your new program. There are several valid answers to this. I'll accept any one because we talked about different ways to import. Here is a simplest way. Import numbers. Now remember, not import numbers.py. Just import numbers. Okay. It looks for something in the current directory that ends in .py. You don't have to, it's good enough for this question. You don't have to give it the path name. You presume it's in the same directory. You can find it. We're good. If you import it this way, then the way you call it is you would say x equals numbers dot factorial of y, where y is the variable. So this is the import. And if you import it this way, this is how you would call it. Now, That is a perfectly valid answer to this question. Here is another way to answer the same question, and this would be accepted. From numbers, import factorial, or alternatively, import all. Okay. If you import using that statement, either import factorial or import star, then the way you would do it, you do not need numbers. You can just say x equals factorial of y. Okay. So you may answer this question either way. I didn't give you a specific direction. If you answered the question this way on the left, you get full credit. If you answer the question this way on the right, you get full credit. I will accept either one. Okay. So you can import different ways. The way you import determines how you call the function that's imported. You just have to match them up. If you said you import numbers and then called like this, I'll give you partial credit. Point again, always try to answer the question. I try to be pretty lenient with the partial credit. You leave it blank, you get a 0. 21. Suppose you had the list of states again. Write a loop that prints out all the states that end in S. You don't need to write an entire Python program, just the loop that does the printing. Remember, the last character in a string, all the states are strings, the last character in a string is always -1. So here's our loop. For state in states. Okay, this is a for each loop. If state sub -1 equals S, print state. And we're done. That's all you need. That is a perfectly valid way to carry out the assignment. This is a loop that will go through each element in states in order, check the last letter to see if it ends in S or not, and it will print out that state. And then if you run that loop, you would go through and you would find out that it prints out Arkansas, it prints out Texas, it prints out Kansas, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This is all you need. Obviously, there's many other ways to do this. You want to print out, use a while loop. As long as your while loop works, you're good. You want to use a for I loop. As long as your for I loop works, you're good. Anything you do, you don't have to say the last, you don't have to say -1. Again, if it's valid Python and it works, I give you credit, but this is the simplest way to do it. A for each loop, to check the last letter of the string, just use -1. 2 equals to compare it to S, and print it if it matches. 22. When a function is called by code in the main program, explain how arguments of the call are matched with parameters in the function definition. We've gone over this. Here is an acceptable answer. Arguments are matched with parameters by order. The first argument is matched with the first parameter, the second with the second, etc. Names don't matter. You don't have to say names don't matter. All I'm looking for is you match in order. I'm looking to, for evidence that you understand that we match in order. That's the key here. 23. We covered 2 ways to remove keys and their associated values from a dictionary, del and pop. We said that pop is more resilient to errors. What does that mean? If you use del and the key is not in the dictionary, the error causes your program to crash. You're done. With pop, you can specify a value to return if the key is not in the dictionary. Your program can continue to execute. So this is sufficient. This is a sufficient answer. Okay. Pop is more resilient because you can specify a value to return rather than just crashing and dying. Don't have to crash and die. Just return a value. We're good to go. You can add more if you want, but that's sufficient by itself. 24. You can import the random number generation library into your program using the following statement: import random, or using the following statement from random import star. Okay. This is one. The reason this looks like a duplicate is this is one of the substitute questions. This question was not on last semester's final, but this does come very close to one of the previous ones. That's fine. Anyway, explain how you would call the randint function using each of the two import statements. That's similar to what I did above. If I use import random, I would say y equals randint, or I would say random.randint 0 to 100. Gee, I cannot type. If you said import random and just y equals randint 0 to 100, if you said, what was the statement from random import star? Okay, similar to the above. 25. In the lecture, it was stated big O of quicksort is O of n squared, but most of the time quicksort runs at approximately O of n log n time in one sentence. Don't get fancy on me. You get one sentence. Describe the worst case that causes us to call quicksort O of n squared. Why is quicksort O of n squared? This was from last Wednesday's lecture. Okay. And how likely is it to occur? Quicksort runs in n squared time if you always pick the worst possible pivot. And this is, I will accept extremely unlikely to occur in real life. The actual probability, the actual likelihood depends on how many elements there are in the list you're sorting, right? It's 1 over n if you got an n. It's 1 over, if you've got a list of n elements, it's 1 over n times 1 over n minus 1 times 1 over n minus 2, et cetera, et cetera. This is good enough. Okay. So quicksort only runs at n squared time if you always pick the worst possible pivot. And if you're picking at random, which is what you're supposed to do, that's extremely unlikely to happen in real life. That's good enough for that one. Okay, that was also, by the way, the second question. Questions 24 and 25 were the ones that were not on last semester's final. 1 through 23 and then 26, 28 were exactly last semester's final. I threw out questions 24 and 25. Okay, the first Python program. I'm going to switch to PyCharm in a minute. Write a Python program that first asks a user to enter the names of 5 college basketball teams, the number of wins for each team, and the number of losses for each team. Use a single input statement to get each team name for, in other words, I want a single statement that gets a name, wins, and losses, because then I want to show you can break this out. Then build a dictionary with the name of each team as a key. For each key, the value is a one-dimensional list with 2 elements, the integer number of wins and the integer number of losses. Then print out the keys and values of the dictionary, one key and its value per line. Let's go to PyCharm. Let's create a new file. I don't want a data sort. I want a new file. Sample final.py. Okay. You're going to do 5 of these. So it's a loop. Y equals input. Enter team. Its wins and its losses. Okay, now I have to split that up into 3. So y list equals y dot split, and we're just going to assume you don't have to. I'm not going to penalize you for not telling the user separate things with tabs or blank spaces or whatever. You could assume that the user put blank space, put white space between the team name, the win number, and the losses number. Okay. You don't have to force that, although if you did, that's good. I would look kindly at it. Now I have a list, and what I have to do is create a dictionary. Okay. So I need to go back and start all this. I need to have a dictionary. Teams equal an empty dictionary. Now, teams sub y list 0 equals list of y list 1, y list 2, anything else that builds a list for the value. And that's incorrect syntax. Thank you, PyCharm. Okay. Dictionaries and remembering when to use curly braces and when to use square braces is interesting, which is why I give you open book tests. You can look it up. Okay. That creates the line in the dictionary. Okay. So that's my for loop. That will run 5 times, and it will get the values, and it will create the dictionary and insert the appropriate values. Okay. Now I have my team's dictionary. And I would use something like this. For key in teams dot keys, okay, print key teams of key. This would print the key. This would print the values. And since it's a standard print sign, with print statement, which ends with a new line, it prints 1 per line. Okay, so that would be an acceptable solution to this question. Ask for what I'm going to show. Ask you to show is create a new dictionary. You can add in a loop. Ask for a team name. You can add the items to the dictionary based on what the user types in, and then printing out the dictionary is straightforward. 27. Write a recursive Python program that checks to see if 2 lists are inverses. That is, 2 lists, A and B, are inverses of each other if they're the same length and the elements are the same, but in the reverse order. A0 is B minus 1, A1 is B minus 2, and so on all the way through. Now, you must use a recursive function, and you must have at least one base case and at least one recursive case. So before I go to PyCharm, I'm going to say, what is my base case? If the lists are not the same length, they are not inverses. That's one base case. If A sub 0, the first element in A, is not equal to B sub minus 1, they are not inverses. And my third base case is if the list is one element long and it's the same element, they are inverses. So those are my base cases. And now my recursive case is, since we know A sub 0 equals B sub minus 1, recursively call with A sub 1 to the end and B sub beginning to minus 1. Okay, do not include the last element in the call. So those are my three base cases. That is my one recursive case. And now let's go write the program. Okay. My function is going to be inverse. It's going to take two lists, A and B. If length of A is not equal to length of B, return the Boolean false. Elif A sub 0 is not equal to B sub minus 1. Sorry, I don't need that colon. Return false. Else, sorry, stray colon. Else, return inverse of A from 1 to the end and B from the beginning to minus 1. That's my function. And now all I need is a main program. Colon. How am I going to get values for A and B? Just going to assign it arbitrarily. The list of 0, 1, 2, 3. B equals the list of 3, 2, 1, 0. Answer equal inverse of A and B. Print answer. This is acceptable because, you would get the values. I did not tell you how to get the values A and B. You could ask for them from the user. They could be loaded some other way. This is sufficient to show that you've got it working. If you left out assigning A and B, I might at most take 1 point. I might even let it slide because I didn't get into it. What I'm looking for this, I mean, if you get these base cases and you get this recursive case, at most, I'm going to take 1 point off. Okay, that's what I'm looking for because you got the recursive program. And the last programming problem, if I have a file called integers.txt that contains lines of numbers separated by tabs, every value in the file is an integer. There are no characters or floats. The number of integers differs on each line. In other words, the file looks something like this. Write a Python program that reads in a line from the file, identifies the largest number on each line, and prints out a message saying the largest number on this line is whatever this largest number you found. Do this for each line in the file. Clarifying notes. The first line of the file is line number 1 on your printout, not line number 0. That was a little nasty thing I did to make you increment by 1, but that's okay, it works out. And just go with the standard mathematical definition. Somebody had asked me, well, what about absolute values? Negative 243 is pretty big. Is that bigger than 81? Let's go with the standard mathematical definition. 81 is greater than negative 243. That's the largest number. Okay. Which is why I put that instruction in there. Okay, so we have a file called integers.txt. It contains these lines of numbers. Let's go to PyCharm. Come back here to get the detailed answers. Okay, with open integers.txt as read as in file. We're going to read 1 line at a time, so we'll use read lines. D equals in file dot read lines. You could do it in a loop and read 1 line at a time. That's fine. D is this was okay. Now, for each line in D, for I in length of D, that will tell me how many lines there are, because remember, that's the length of this list of strings. Okay. I have to split D sub I. So current line equals D sub I dot split. And I told you in the instructions, it's split on a tab. Okay. This will create the values. Now, everything has to be, current line is now a list, but they're still strings. So even though I told you they're all integers, since I read them from a file, they all come in as strings. So I have to convert. Okay. For J in length of current line, I have to do this differently for each line. Current line sub J equals int of current line sub J. Okay. Now, current line is a line of integers. Okay. It's a list of integers. There are many ways to do this. Here's a simple one. Max equals current line sub 0. For. Now, this previous thing is done. I can reuse J. This is not going to cause a problem because that loops over. For J in length, if you want to use a different variable to avoid confusion, that's fine too. If current line sub J is greater than max, max equals current line sub j. This gives me the largest value in the line. Now let's go back and recheck the instructions. I don't think, yeah, you don't have to say where it is. You just have to say the largest number is this largest number you found. This is max. I don't have to keep the index handy of where I found this. If I had to keep the index handy, it would be fine. Now all I'm going to do, since I've done that, I have the largest number. Let's make sure my indentation is correct. Yes. Print the largest number in line I plus 1. That's my nastiness to say that you have to start at 1, not 0. Is max. Okay? So that is an acceptable answer to question 28. Okay? That's all I'm looking for. This right here. You don't have to write the if name equals main. Doesn't hurt if you do, but that's a valid program that would work. Okay. Obviously can't run it because I don't have an integer.txt file handy. So if I tried to run it, it would crash. But that would be an acceptable one. So if you have any, that is the last question on the sample exam. And we are just about out of time. If you have any questions about that sample exam, anything on it, ping me on Discord, ping me by email, ping me whatever, sometime between now and Monday, and I'll try to answer and explain. Like I said, I discovered, there's always going to be a typo or two. Other than that, if you need an extension on Project 3, if you have to have it, let me know. Ping me on Discord, ping me by email, either one. You can have until Friday night at midnight. Try to finish if you can, but if you have to have till Friday, I'll let you do that because I understand people are busy and it's a tough project. It's deliberately a very tough project. When you get Project 3 working, you should feel very pleased with yourself as a Python programmer solving real-world problems that can help in your academic career. If you are going to have a problem with the final at 3:30 on Monday, let me know so we can work it around. The two of you who we've arranged for Monday morning, you're fine. I'll make it available then. Those of you who have accommodations and get extra time, you start at 3:30 and you have the appropriate time. Don't worry about it. I got that set up. If there's anything else, let me know. And with that, we are out of time. It's been, I think, as good a semester as it could have been given the COVID experiences. I am generally pleased with the progress you students have made, and I'm available for a while if you have any questions.